Hi, Steve and Caleb from Brownells, and in today's quick tip, we want to show you a few pointers on how to keep things from loosening up under vibration.
Yes, and as far as like the world of just thread lockers in general go, they're widely overused.
Yeah.
Especially the higher strength stuff is way overused. And we did a video a while back on like where to use thread locker on your AR-15, and that one was okay. But I kind of want to talk about, even though we have a BRN4 here, just firearms in general, and which thread locker to use where, rather than just like the go no go areas, you know.
Yep.
So, with that being said, Steve, we have our Brownells thread lockers here, all the way from like the lowest strength up to the highest strength, which will be, we'd consider rock set.
Right.
And let's just kind of start off with the lowest strength stuff. This is the shock/vibration resistant coating. And this is the one you could use almost anywhere. This is one that like, if you're questioning whether or not you should use Loctite at all, then this is the only one you should be considering.
Right, and this is the equivalent of what, blue Loctite maybe?
No, this is even lower strength than that.
Oh, okay.
So this is just the equivalent of whatever the anti-vibration Loctite, I don't remember, but it's not technically like an actual like locking compound. It's just like an anti-vibration compound, if that makes sense. So you could easily remove it by hand, but it won't vibrate loose, is the whole premise of it. So this is great if you need something on, let's say your scope ring screws. This is great for those. Other screws like these side mounting bolts here that you usually don't put anything on the AR-15 platform, or like 1913 style mounts. Yeah. These are good for that. If you wanted to put something. Of course, if you just properly torque it, you should be okay with most of these. And as a general rule of thumb as well, like typically better thread fitments don't come loose as easy, right? Like nuts bolt like fitment, right? So with your cheaper, if you have something you bought that was more affordably manufactured.
Nicely put. And
you can't, let's say you can't spend the money to upgrade it, then just throw some of this stuff on there.
Cool.
So, yeah, there's a little tip there. And like things like the bipod screws, just general screws like that. You could even put this stuff on your grip screw if you wanted to. Pretty much anywhere that's the blue or red thread locker are considered a little bit too strong for.
Right.
And when I say too strong, Steve, we're talking about like areas where you would run the risk of tearing up some threads.
Right, or having to heat it up to get it loose, and you don't want to heat up your scope at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And typically with softer aluminum, like for example, the castle nut's a great example for this. The castle nut back here, I would recommend not using any of these on, but the castle nut, that's a aluminum tube with a steel nut, and there's not a lot of clearance in those threads.
Nope.
So when you jam them full of Loctite, something's going to give, and oftentimes it's the aluminum, which is why you stake castle nuts. So let's talk about the blue stuff. Where do you put the blue stuff?
Right, that's what we see the most of.
So the blue would actually be really good in areas like, let's say, I know I mentioned you could use this on your scope mount as well, but if you want something that's going to be like a heavy duty, like just insanely rugged gun that you're going to be beating the heck out of, then in that scenario you could use blue on these. Just know that you're going to have a harder time getting them off. Even though it is blue Loctite, you don't need heat, but it is going to hold stronger than this stuff. And
torque screws are preferred.
Torque screws are preferred, yes. That way you can get a good purchase on them with your driver, and you're not going to slip and damage the head of the screw trying to get it out. Yeah, so that's a great point. If you have a torque screw on a scope base, then you can go ahead and throw some blue on there. And that's really the only area you need to be using any thread locker on the AR-15, you know?
Pretty much. And bear in mind, if you put thread locker on your scope screws and you're torquing them down, that acts as a lubricant, so don't exceed your torque. If you can go just a hair under it, that's even better, because it's going to make it easier to turn it in farther.
Yeah,
you got to be careful.
That's a great point. And it's always a good practice to degrease the screws as well, the screws and the holes, especially if there's a lot of oil on there. Use some kind of degreaser to clean it so that the thread locker can properly adhere.
Alcohol, acetone, gun scrubber, you name it.
Yep, all that stuff will work just fine. And kind of moving on from there, let's talk about the high strength stuff. Now, high strength, you need heat to remove.
Yep.
And the high strength stuff on the AR-15, honestly, I don't use it anywhere. On your bolt action rifles, I'll use that between the receiver and the bases. That's a good spot for it. But there's very few places you actually need the high strength stuff. And honestly, like I know some people use this stuff if they're using a red dot on the top of an optic like this. They'll mount that red dot with some red thread locker.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue there is, like I said, you need heat to remove it.
Sure.
So if you want to pull that thing off, you risk damaging that optic. So for that, I would use blue thread locker.
Now, speaking of the high strength stuff, I've seen a lot of dovetailed pistol sights put in that have been glued in place, more or less.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to do things.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the way I would do it, unless there's a screw there, of course.
Right.
Because thread engagement is what this stuff is actually made for.
Yeah. And I've used the bearing retainer type to put liners into barrels.
Yeah, that's some pretty cool
The
stuff.
gap filling type.
Yeah, and we don't have that here, but know that is another option out there.
Yeah,
as
if
well.
you don't want to epoxy it in, that's a perfectly good solution.
Yep, that's some great stuff.
I've got a couple guns shooting that use that system.
Sweet. So, Steve, let's jump on to the last one, the craziest, the high temperature ceramic thread locker.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff here is for areas that are subject to high temperature.
Hot.
Yeah, so if you have a suppressor mounting muzzle device, this is the stuff you want to use.
Right.
That's the only area you want to use this. You don't want to use it on your gas block screws. I mean, I guess technically you could.
Sure.
But getting it off is going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
And the best way to actually remove this stuff is to boil it and boil it in water, and the water can help break it down, that boiling water. And that's really the only good way to get it off without overheating anything.
But it'll keep your muzzle device from unscrewing or loosening up.
Yep, and so that's the only place you should use it. And some people say, with that being said, what thread locker should I use on gas block screws? And honestly, Steve, I don't use any.
No. If they're dry and they're good fit, because that gas block gets hot, it's going to loosen up any type of Loctite pretty much.
Yeah, so the red thread locker is going to, within a few shots, it's going to be cooked.
Yep.
And then this stuff just locks it on there so tight. You may or may not get that gas block screw out again without destroying the head of it.
Right. And then it's time for the drill.
Then it's time for, then you got to drill them out, and it's a whole thing. If you're worried about your gas block coming loose that much, I'd say just pin it.
Yeah, that makes it easy.
Yeah, pin it and forget it.
So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, Steve. We kind of covered the what, when, where of thread locker compound. So.
Well, maybe if you know some good uses for Loctite type products, thread blockers, you name it, give us a comment down below. We'd like to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.